Hi, it's Susan. Welcome back to my channel. Today I just have a little show and tell share for you. I wanted to show you some of the fabrics that I have been dyeing with my leftover inks. Some of you have been watching for a few weeks. I was dyeing tracing paper and parchment paper and wax paper with some very old Bombay India inks that I had, and they were drying up at the bottom, and so I just kept splashing them on paper and making some really yummy papers, which there's a couple of lives on that. And so when I got to the bottom and there was still paint or still ink left in the bottles, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with it. And one of my favorite things to do with leftover paint or inks or sprays is to put it on fabric scraps, because then I can take those scraps and sew them into bigger pieces or use them in a journal. So I just wanted to show you some of the wonderful pieces that I had. Most of the time these are just cotton sheets that I have in a little basket next to where I paint, and then I just grab one to sop up the paint, maybe spray some water on it, scrunch it up and leave it out in the sun. And in this case, when I still had a whole lot left, I just grabbed a bunch of it, dumped it on my disposable cookie sheets, added water, and I would scrunch it up like this so that it would dry wet or dry scrunched up, and then when I would open it up and iron it, I would get just some really wonderful effects. This is a little more green than perhaps it shows on the screen, and this wonderful veining that just sometimes happens. I just love it. And you think, well, little scraps like this, would I really use it? But you will, because you could have, oh, that one's too short. You could have an envelope and you could be adding it to that. Maybe you might add it to the purple, or this one. You can add it to a tag, you can add it to a journal page. So any kind of scraps, I just save them, and they're a lot more interesting to me. And of course I could do them if I was doing slow stitching. I could stitch them together, and that might be kind of interesting with just some embroidery stitches on it, chop it down. So I have a lot of strips because I was going to do ties for journals, and I may or may not do that. Look at that, just and again, that's just from scrunching these things up. This was something else. This was probably an upholstery scrap. Like I said, most of them were paints sheets. This was a piece of linen, and I did not add any water to it, so it got really stiff. So this actually might be a good belly band. Look at the veining in this. I just love this. It is just so yummy. So yummy. So a lot of these strips I could piece together and make something even better, bigger and better, and who knows, but there's just so much juicy goodness here. And I've got some other videos where I have dyed fabric with distressed inks, which is very popular, of course, and then I use alcohol inks as well. Since these are India inks, for the most part, I think they are permanent. You might want to rinse them out. I would not recommend buying India ink just to dye fabric, because they are very pricey. I just, like I said, had old ones I was trying to use up because they were getting all dried at the bottom, so I had to keep adding water and adding water. So then, of course, each wash got a little bit lighter. These greens and the terracotta. It just makes me so happy. It was a lot more interesting to me than looking at sheet scraps that I had torn up and was never going to really use, because I have my sari silk that I usually use for closures. I mean, there's gobs, and if you just keep a stack of fabric scraps near wherever you're doing any kind of inking or painting, and use them to mop things up, and for a while I was really good about having several colors. I would have my blue rag and my purple rag and my green rag. Sometimes they all get mixed up, and that's okay too. So this is a really long one. Just, and so I could use it as it is, or I could just cut apart pieces, and I'm not going to have enough room on my desk to share them all. Just toss them there. Purples. Purple used to be my favorite color when I was a teenager, and I have fallen out of love with it, but seeing all the yummy purples that came out when I did this, I might have to do something purpley. This was a nylon something that popped in there, and it actually took some color. So, it's a great grunge. It would be wonderful. I mean, it could make a fabric tag just like that, and then do some more stuff on top of it. I try, it's not always the case, but I try to not have an end thing in mind when I'm doing something like this, when I'm doing mop-ups, like when I did throwing all these inks on tracing paper and parchment paper, and then playing with the different things, and it turned out that wax paper was my favorite way to use them. I wasn't thinking about what I was going to do with them. I was hoping some of them would be good enough to be pages in a journal, and they are. But then a lot of them I can go ahead and just make other things out of them. So I made a bunch of envelopes, and they're fabulous envelopes, and they've got that wonderful crunchy sound. So this was a patterned fabric, and it's a nice pattern, but I have so much of it that I went ahead, and it's just kind of a beige, so I liked it. It was a little bit more interesting to me doing that. The whites did not dissolve very well, so I got some odd splotchy stuff, and that's just part of the grunge, could really make some great grungy journals. And the wrinkles that you see here, in a lot of the cases, they're just the permanent lines because of the way the ink has fallen in the fabric. And then I ironed everything. And so they look like it's 3D. You've got this texture effect, but really it's from all the inking. And I mean, I got gobs and gobs. It's fabulous. So I think I'm going to have to piece some of the purples together, and maybe, because I've got these really long strips. Let's see, that's one of the shorter long strips. But I think I'm going to have to piece some of the purples together maybe for a journal cover, and do one all in purples. So what is your favorite way to dye pieces of fabric if you like to do that sort of thing? I think my favorite is still probably doing alcohol inks, just because then I know it's a permanent thing that's happened to the inks, but you have to work fast. It's harder to get this kind of an effect unless you start with them kind of, crumpled up and, maybe slightly damp so that they'll hold those crinkles. Love this. Oh, that just looks like you're lost in the forest. This might have started, this started off on some green fabric. And so the reason I like the alcohol inks is because it's so fast, they dry so fast, and then I've got access to the fabrics right away. I like the distress ones, using the distress reinkers to dye things, because you get some of that wonderful effect, when the inks combine with water, and you can get this great mottled effect. But I have done this even with acrylic paint, if you water it down enough so that it's not like super stiff. And you can, of course, add fabric medium to a lot of your paints and use them on fabric. And because I can't draw realistically, I need to go for the abstract kind of stuff, or using stencils. This is another one of the really long ones. I need to come up with abstract ways to use my paints, and so scrunching them up and doing things like that is really awesome. And you can do them on your jelly plate. You can, if you want to do them flat, you can just paint with it. Lots of people just paint, and you can stamp, of course. And a lot of these would be great to, I could take stamps. This is just a great green one, and I could put some leaves or a tree on there, maybe a little tree coming off of the edge. It's hard for you to get the full effect on these long, skinny ones because they're long and skinny. But it was really great to use these up because they have been sitting in my stash for the longest time and not getting used. And so little things like this, you think, well, what would you use that for? But can't you just see that on a tag? I mean, I wish I brought some tags out to show you, or the edge of a page, or, you could even fold it over the edge of the page like that and make a little tab. That's another thing, these narrow strips like this, these are great to cut off like that and make little tabs to go, I don't have a book page, but you could do a little tab on the edge of a book or at the edge of a page, especially because they're some of these are kind of stiff because I didn't water them down very much. Oh, so yummy. It's almost like a kaleidoscope the way the colors come out. I mean, there's gobs. There is gobs. I was ironing for hours. Okay, not hours and hours, but hours. I did discover no, that one didn't get ironed correctly. And sometimes you can't always tell when you're going to get the veining. I do have another method of coloring fabric that gets me veining more often, and I will show you that in another video. But the veining, I think, would be really cool to go back in sometimes with a fine liner pen, and then you could accent the veining, which is just a very cool thing to do. And look at this. I still got fabric. It's just like going to the thrift store and finding all your favorite laces and stuff. Look at all the, you know, sometimes they're scrunched up, and I'll just go back out and with a squirt bottle and just randomly start squirting things, and it just gets another layer, I guess, because it'll lighten some of the areas and darken some of the others where the color drifts. So, you know, you don't have to have any rules to follow on this. Now, if you don't want all the little folded pieces like that, of course you could cut your strips in such a way that they're flat and then just drop your color on them or paint it on with a brush. But I wanted the randomness of this because it just makes them so yummy. I know, that's my favorite word when I'm looking at color. Is it yummy color? Is it yummy? And it is usually yummy color. You know, and even stuff, it's funny. I remember when I did my alcohol inks last summer, and I had some, and I was like, oh, I was so disappointed with them. And, you know, I didn't work fast enough, so I had a lot of blotchy stuff. And then I cut a piece for a journal cover, and it turned out to be absolutely perfect. See, got some little veining here, like water spotting. So, you know, I don't toss this stuff if I don't like it the first time. I just throw it in the basket where it lives. And where does it live? Well, I have my various baskets for dyed stuff. And I wish that I had kept my distressed dyed stuff separately, but I didn't. So I can't say that everything that I dye is permanent, but most of the time it is. So I did do a few bigger pieces. So this is big enough for a couple journal covers. Look at the veining on that. Is that not awesome? It looks a little dark here on the screen on my computer. I don't know about yours, but it's very green. The veins are all green with hints of terracotta. And this one has some amazing veining. Again, another big piece in purples and blacks. It's got some great, look at that. So I think I could do probably 3 journal covers out of this piece and have a little bit left over for something else. The other thing I do is that I will dye tea bags. This is a tea bag, you know, and I'll have it like right next to where I'm painting, and I'll just use it to sop up paint as well. And that is just you can't order yourself to make a piece of collage paper like that. There's another tea bag. Let's see what else we have over here. It's another tea bag. Look at these wonderful tea bags. And then these tea bags are a little different. It's a like a polyester almost kind of material that my cinnamon tea comes in. And so it doesn't get quite the veining, but you can change the color. So that'll be something else fun to play with. And so I keep just little things like this. When you have your jar of paint water and it gets down to the bottom, we're on a septic system here, so I don't dump my paint water down the sink no matter what kind of paint water it is. I have a container out on the deck that's got sand in it, and when I have something that I have to dispose of, I will dump it in there so that it can just evaporate, and then when it piles up on the top, I can throw it in the garbage. But I'll just pile my little, you know, when I get like watercolors or paint or whatever, and it's mostly water with a little bit of color, I'll just tuck my little scraps into my jar like that until they soak up the water. And this is what I end up with, is great little yummy scraps. Now I need to do my mermaid book so that I can use all these little scraps that I have made just by soaking up all that paint water. Some of them get the great fraying happening. You know, so little things like this you don't think you would save for sewing, but wouldn't you use that as on a piece of ephemera? Not everybody is crazy like I am to save all those little things, but because I do save them, I get some just really neat little things that I can use for effects. Okay, here's a couple more that are really stiff because I did not add water to them. That wasn't my intention, I just forgot. But then they are like so hard. You can hear them like that. But you can still, I mean, I'll still be able to sew through them and do stuff with them. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, cheesecloth, of course. You know, we all love to do cheesecloth. And normally I would just do that with my distress stuff, but I had some water left and I just tucked my cheesecloth in there. And then if you scrunch it up, of course, you can get some of the lighter and darker tonings, and that's just, I think, really yummy. Some more tea bags. Wow, I didn't realize I had so many little pieces. This is awesome. Another set of tea bags, little pieces. Another scrap with some nice veining in here. What else do we have here? Another one of those little, so it's kind of hard to see, but it does have some neat little veining up there. Oh, some purple. Some more of the blues. So pretty. The other thing that this was good for me is that I hadn't been painting for a while, so my muscle memory for colors was kind of off a little bit, and I was able to play with colors and remind myself of what colors I liked and what colors looked good together and what colors made other colors. I think that, yeah, that was another piece of that fabric. Yeah, so they might not be super exciting as they are, but when I think about putting that together and maybe making a small journal cover, that could be really cool. This was some upholstery fabric. I wasn't sure if it would take color, and it did. I'll probably cut that into scraps. Some more purple. If you don't add a lot of other colors to it, then basically you're just dyeing your white fabric a different color, and that worked for me too. The old cotton, I think, really, I think this was an old cotton pillowcase. I think that really gets the veining, maybe just because of the age of the fabric. That one needs some more color. And some more of the greens. This guy didn't get ironed. But those have got some yummy earthy colors. And here's some more cheesecloth. Ooh, I wish I had cheesecake. I love cheesecake. And some more cheesecloth. I love the cheesecloth and all the different sizes of holes. And you just get different effects, of course, each time. Wonderful greens in the different sizes. There's a few more pieces here that are pretty stiff. So not bad, considering I also got about 150 pages of great color on tracing paper, and then I did some regular copy paper to use for journal pages, and then I got all this fabric, all with trying to use up these inks and just keep adding water to the color until I got to the bottom of the bottle. That's all I have for you now. Thank you so much for watching. If you're not already a subscriber, I hope you will consider subscribing and leaving me a thumbs up, because they always make me smile. Have a great day. Bye for now.